Yes, they're
Good to go?
The mics are on.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for being here. We're going to get started with our next panel, which is going to focus on something that's been on the forefront of a lot of people's minds that participate in the hemp industry, and that is the 2024 Farm Bill. And to my right here, we have Bret Worley, the CEO and founder of MC Nutraceuticals. Justin Swanson, who is an attorney and a lobbyist for Lowe's Public Affairs Group. Rosanna Catalano, who is also an attorney and a lobbyist out of Florida, both on the state and federal level at Anfield Consulting. And JD McCormick, the president of American Healthy Alternatives Association, as well as the Florida Healthy Alternatives Association. And as much as I love every single one of you, I see you way too many times a week on a Zoom screen, but it's good to have everybody up here today. And I think kind of one of the best ways to start with this, and some people may or may not understand how we got to where we are, is just a little bit of historical context. And I know Rosanna's done a lot of work on that, and Ro, can you kind of give us just a quick breakdown of how we got to where we are in the context of farm bills and regulated hemp across the country?
Sure. So obviously, as you know, we've been banned for approximately 100 years. In 1970, they passed the Controlled Substances Act. And then in 2014, the feds just cracked the door open just ever so little so that we could have pilot programs in this space. And then in 2018, the Farm Bill, as you all know it, passed. We are now, every 5 years, Congress looks at these bills. They're going to reevaluate the Farm Bill. And that's why we're here now talking about the Farm Bill. It's been up now for a year so far. We're now in year 6. And that's how we're here.
Wonderful. And I think it's important to note, I know everybody up here can kind of speak, certainly with a granular level of detail about the 2018 Farm Bill, but from a legal perspective, Justin, is there any specific language that's contained in the 2018 Farm Bill that has allowed people to open businesses, operate businesses? Are there any of those words that are in there critically important to what is going on in this industry, or maybe the floor below us?
All of them. Look, it's the definition of hemp. It's extremely broad, and the only metric needed to evaluate whether it's legal at the federal level is the concentration of one cannabinoid out of the plant, right? It's the delta-9 THC concentration, right? And that's what has spurred this industry up and to build up, and really from the grassroots perspective. So, Cynthia did a great job of articulating some of the opponents on the other side of this, and we've done this but for all of those efforts, against us. So words matter on paper, obviously. Again, the other lobbyists up here, we all get irritated when we hear the term loophole, right? And if this was such a public safety crisis, why did it languish for 6 years before it was dealt with or, tried to deal with? So words matter in statute. The statute's very clear. Courts are supposed to, when you're evaluating a statute, looking at it constitutionally, first step they make is a plain reading of the statute, and the statute's very clear. Hemp is anything below 0.3% delta-9 THC.
And Bret, someone who's been operating a business within the space, and certainly under those very critical words in the 2018 Farm Bill, can you give us a little bit of insight as far as what that has meant to your business or your business practices?
Yeah, MC Nutraceuticals sells every cannabinoid that's on delta-9 THC, so anything over 0.3% delta-9 THC would be federally illegal, and you'd be a drug trafficker over state lines specifically. So we have 46 cannabinoids, and the broad Farm Bill definition is allowed for innovation, CBN, CBC, THCV, all these cannabinoids that are highly therapeutic for functional relief, and then also for cannabinoids like delta-8, DHEA, etc. And also we can make gummies with delta-9 THC that are under 0.3% delta-9 on a dry weight basis. So it's allowed for interstate commerce. I always say that marijuana companies are about 8 times more clunky than hemp companies. That means they have 8 times more people per revenue dollar, or 8 times more facilities, or 8 times whatever it is. So it takes about 8 more humans to make one decision in a marijuana company to make $1. So that's the best way to look at it from an economic standpoint.
And, JD, as someone who, kind of straddles that line between, political advocacy and a business owner, can you explain a little bit how, what Bret does might impact what you do as a business owner and, potentially how you got into advocacy as it relates to the 2018 Farm Bill?
So I have retail stores, and in 2020, early 2021, my stores are vape shops, right? We're selling all nicotine products, disposables, big vapes. And in late 2020, early 2021, I saw my CBD revenue, and I heard about this new product called Delta 8, and I saw that revenue start to tick up from 5%, 10%, when it was just tinctures and lotions, to 20%, 30%, 40% in a very short period of time. And I did a little bit of research, and I said, holy crap. This is the first time in modern American history that small businesses and consumers can freely trade in THC products. We're out of prohibition. This is a huge deal. Bret's company is a raw material company. Downstream the effects of what he's produced, billions of milligrams have made it into consumers' hands all over the country that otherwise would have only had access to black market products. And it's through his innovation and companies like his innovation that has allowed this market to prosper and has really allowed us to fight back against 100 years of misinformation, reefer madness, and negative PR. So it's really, really incredible.
Well, I think, critical to what you just mentioned is, this fight. This fight that, might not just be raging between businesses competing with one another, down the street from each other or across town, but, what kind of fight, are we seeing, whether it be from big marijuana or from, varying political interests? How is that playing out on kind of the federal scale or in Washington, D.C.? And, certainly I know everybody up here has their own take on it, but Justin, do you want to kick us off on that?
On what specifically, sorry?
Mary Miller. No, I think we're going to dance. I mean, so much for the delicate dance, but I think, what, we all know I'm not delicate. Sweet Jesus. That being said, what kind of fight are we seeing on the federal level, now that the Farm Bill is up for, reauthorization potentially, or, revising or redrafting, what sort of fights are happening, in the halls of Congress, and, how have we seen that play out? What influences are, shaping that narrative on the Hill in DC?
Sure, and I think the hemp industry is a perfect example. We've heard this a lot in our conversations with attorney generals around the country. Attorney generals sit in a spot, right in the epicenter of law, policy, and politics, right? And that's no different for hemp, right? We have wars going on in the courthouses, we have them going on in individual state houses, and perhaps more importantly, we have it going on the Hill right now. And so when we went in and we're educating members of Congress and their staff on what's going on, at first they were all looking at us like we were dumb, like why would we ever want to change the definition of hemp, and you guys are crazy. And then, reauthorization comes up and all of a sudden, it happens. And the good thing for us is, I think all of us have been really articulate on the fact that this has nothing to do with public safety or anything like that. It has everything to do with market share. And luckily, one of the, politics makes, weird bedfellows, and luckily, one of the marijuana groups put out a letter saying, yeah, well, all these THCs need to be illegal. And it's like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen that the movie on Netflix, Don't Look Up. It's like you have an association who's advocating for marijuana, now advocating for prohibition for THC if it's derived from hemp. So, and it's going to come, again, I think JD or someone mentioned earlier, they're using what was used against them in the day against us now, and they need to be very careful on their messaging with us, because again, it's going to come around, it's a long life.
Well, I think, they're using their messaging that maybe they've been using historically, or maybe messaging that they may have seen from, again, the odd bedfellows in the form of big tobacco that is now playing in the marijuana space. But what does some of that messaging look like, and how have we seen that play out in the context of potentially Amendment 35 that was offered in the House Agricultural Committee markup in May? Right? Do you have any ideas about that? Passionate?
Probably. I mean, USCC, United States Cannabis Council, more than likely snuck their way into Mary Miller's amendment, because a lot of the language is, the amendment banning hemp is very specific to what the U.S. Cannabis Council had done in their public opinion of what should happen. So, you know, we've kind of tied those two things together, but the reality at the end of the day is Mary Miller's amendment got shoved into what they call an en bloc, which means that the Republicans are going to vote in a group, which they had the votes, and they voted on 14 other, you know, amendments, you know, that were maybe good, maybe bad, who knows. So we got shoved into something procedurally that we probably shouldn't have been. Some of us might think we had the votes. I think we had the votes.
I think that's why they did what they did.
Maybe that's why they did what they did. That's exactly why they did what they did. So, you know, that's what procedurally happened. You know, the good news is, and I've been saying this lately, is I'm glad they did it because it brought the hemp industry together. It made us realize that, you know, you got to save all of it, not some of it, whether it's beverage or fiber or biomass or Delta 8. You know, they'll come and take it all. They'll take all of it. So the good news is it brought us all together. You know, we've been working together for a while, but it brought in some other associations that might have not agreed with everything that we've done in the past, you know, to the table, and the hemp industry's rowing together. And at the end of the day, it seems like Congress is, you know, on our side for the most part, given, you know, the Mace Amendment that was filed, or that, you know, filed on Friday, last Friday, Thursday, Friday.
Well, it was filed last Friday, but we're jumping ahead into the agricultural appropriations bill, but
You know, I like jumping around. But, you know, good things are happening in Congress, and, you know, Mary Miller's amendment has really lost steam, and, you know, everything that we're hearing is that, the Agricultural Committee will pick this back up next year, so.
when, you know, JD, you've been involved in politics in DC, you know, and certainly in Florida as well, and, you know, when, you know, speaking with elected officials, you know, on the Hill in DC, you know, what is education more important surrounding what everything that hemp does? Is education surrounding this market share play more important? You know, what have you found to be some of the most effective messaging and talking points? And, you know, as we were piggybacking on the last panel, you know, when you read the room, you know, what do you think really resonates?
So I'm going to go back to what Justin Swanson said. A year and a half ago, if you would have walked into a legislator's office in Congress and started talking hemp definitions and cannabinoids, they almost would have laughed you out of the room. They didn't know what you were talking about. Like, what, hemp? Hemp is an issue? This isn't an issue. When it came back up, of course, the Farm Bill, just about 8 months ago, a year ago, the conversation quickly shifted against us. I went on a website, it's called OpenSecrets.com, and tracked all the big multi-state operators, all the big marijuana companies, all the money they're spending in DC, what they can track, not the dark money, what they can track. They're spending $6 million a year in Congress lobbying for whether it be the legalization of marijuana or the banning of hemp products.
And for how many years, right?
Endless number of years. Yeah, in a row, right. And that actually brings up a great point. We're kind of the new kids on the block, right? So now we've been jumping up and down and screaming and shouting, saying, hey, we've got market stability, we've got interstate commerce, we've got banking, we've got all this great stuff. And $6 million in lobbyists are coming down on us like sledgehammers. So the fact that we've even pulled off the couple of amendments we have in AgriProbes is incredible. I mean, this really is a David versus Goliath story. And so to finish up the answer to your question, Philip, I think education is as much a factor of getting information into their head at scale, right? Because remember, there's 435 Congress members, there's 100 senators. If there are $6 million lobbyists on the marijuana side, and we've got significantly less than that, they're in more offices than we are consistently. They're having more meetings, they're at more dinners, they're at more cocktail hours than we are. So the fact that we've even gotten what headway we have is fantastic. And now the Mary Miller Amendment, I think, to Bret's well-made point, is bringing everyone together. I've had conversations with beverage guys, with fiber guys, and everyone is paying attention now. And that is so ungodly important. We all have to work together, whatever our differences are.
And I think on the education point, Philip, right, is we're hearing these products are marketed to kids. We don't know what's in them. But, there is no uniformity, right? And so I think our message at the federal level that's really resonating is prohibition is not how you deal with any of that. In fact, it's going to exacerbate those very concerns, putting you back underground. Instead, right, we've all been talking about this four-pillar approach, right? What makes this industry even more difficult is you have individual states that have made widely different decisions on how to regulate this market. From on this spectrum, we're going to kill it all and give it all to the marijuana guys. From on the other perspective is we don't know enough, we're too scared, we're just not going to touch it, and you guys just do what you're going to do. But that four pillars approach, I think, gives Congress a roadmap on how to get out of this, right? Because at the end of the day, bureaucrats want to look good and they don't want to work very hard. That's just my personal opinion. So if you come with them to a solution on what they're hearing, that makes their life that much easier. And so the four pillars, right, it's uniform packaging, labeling, testing, and then age gating. And then let the states figure out the rest of the stuff. But that way we have a federal minimum consumer safety floor that doesn't leave us open to attacks in the future.
Go ahead.
I wanted to just take a moment and speak to the crowd a little bit. I know JD had talked about the $6 million working against the hemp industry at the federal level. I think everyone in this room should be acutely aware that this room is not filled. And that to me is the scariest for you all. I have a business, and if you are banned, my business will still go on. Your business is dependent on some words written on a page in Congress that can easily be deleted. This room should be packed. I know this is a nascent industry, this is new, but you don't see this in established industries. Insurance, when they have conferences, the political part, when they talk about seminars and lobbying, that is packed. And everyone has lobbyists, and everyone has attorneys, and everyone is working in lockstep with advocacy. And what worries me is that there are a lot of people in this building, but they're not in this room, and they're not hearing this message. And for those of you that are here, it's really important to spread the word with regards to this advocacy work. Think about it as $6 million is working against you and your business every day. And that's just at the federal level. That's just the money you can track on a website. Think about it in terms of states. I mean, we look at Florida. I can't even tell you how much money is working against you in Florida alone. That's where I live and work. So I bring that to your attention, and that's all. But I really wanted to bring that up.
No, I think that's absolutely... I think that's very important to note. I was sitting with a colleague at dinner last night, and he and I were remarking about how more than likely this room wouldn't be full today, unfortunately, and how the floor would be packed with people that have no idea about what is going on, whether that be in their own backyards, at state houses, that are, home states, whatever the case, but more importantly on the federal level. Yet, everybody's enjoying their time here and pushing product and all of those things. Well, it seems as if, if we don't do anything about it, people are just going to get passed by. And realistically speaking, last time I looked at it, out of the 942 pages of the 2024 Farm Bill, there were about 7 or 8 pages. And again, that's easily a delete, a strike through, that is gone.
Let's be real clear, it already is there. The Republicans take the Senate, the House has already decided that Delta 8's banned in all hemp. They take the Senate, it'll pass the Senate, it'll be signed by the President the next year. So you have 1 year to figure this out.
So with that 1 year runway, what has happened since this Mary Miller Amendment dropped in May during that House Agricultural Committee markup? What other tactics have we seen employed? What else are we fighting against right now, Brian? Do you have any insight to that?
Yeah, the Mary Miller language has not only been dropped in the Agricultural Committee, but then it got dropped into the Agri-Probes Committee, which is not where it belongs, but I'll leave that up to the lawyers in that one. At the federal level, those are the it's dirty pool, like whoever plays pool. It's not a fair fight. So, right now, hemp is banned. If it proceeds as is. Luckily, our team has done a pretty good job of pretty much striking it out of Agri-Probes with the Mace Amendment. That's been co-sponsored by Comer, Barr, Massey, and Garvey. And Congress is listening, but it only takes so long for, a chairman somewhere to reach out to a House member and say, hey, well, let's just keep Delta 8 and all the cannabinoids alike banned. So, that's what's next. I mean, there's going to be some sort of negotiation, and if we don't play a really good game, we will lose. So everyone should really remember that in their head, that there is $6 million minimum working against us. It's probably more like $50 million, just to be quite frank. And there's 30 lobby firms working against us, and they know people, and they will collect the votes when the vote day comes, and we will lose if we don't band together and fight together and use our pocketbooks too.
Yeah, and to illustrate Brett's point on the dirty pool tactics, right? They rolled it up in Blanc, which I know you hit on that, but they put like 19 amendments together, treated it as one, and every person on that committee had pet projects in that amendment that they didn't want to vote against, right? But to that end, we did have 3 Republicans on committee who raised concerns on what was going on and how it was being done, and without industry input at all.
Crazy enough, there was more hemp concerns than anything else.
Yeah, that's right.
Hemp was the most, you're talking about $1 trillion package, yep. And hemp was the most controversial thing in it.
Yeah, and so huge shout out to Congressman Baird, Congressman Nunn, and Congressman Van Orden, and they had the courage to at least call a spade and say this is not normally how we do things, and Blanc amendments are supposed to be non-controversial. And then to Brett's further point on the AgriPros committee, they have rules on how they operate. They are blatantly breaking their own rules, putting this language into an appropriations bill. You're not supposed to put legislation and authorizing legislation. So again, to Brett, all of our points up here, we are up against people who know how to operate on the Hill. We're the new people on the block, and we need everybody's help to raise awareness.
And they will cheat.
Yes, on these efforts.
Dynamite dropping on the cheating comment. I think that it's important to note that they're focused, they're mobilized. They've been, doing this for quite some time. Justin and I have had the luxury of speaking with a number of different Republican attorneys general across the country. Well, come to find out, large marijuana companies, big marijuana has been donated to the Democratic attorney generals for the last 10 years. I mean, it's not that far-fetched to think that all of these blue states with blue attorney generals, are alive and thriving because they've been playing dirty pool for this long. I mean, they took the playbook straight from big tobacco, and I think that if we don't either catch up or at least try to meet them at their own game in some ways, we're absolutely going to fail. And so, with that in mind, what are the things that we can do to kind of change the narrative? I know everybody probably has their own unique perspective on that. So, JD, I'll start with you. What do you think hemp can do to help win this fight? Whether it be in the short, medium, or even long term.
I think honestly, if you look at the United States, it's a chessboard, okay? Blue states versus red states. The issue seems to me to be hitting a fork in the road, starting to diverge, okay? It seems to me that blue states are going with the medical and recreational model, these limited licensure schemes, and red states, where hemp has most of its business, is starting to go hemp. Now, it's kind of counterintuitive. You may think that Republicans are, naturally against marijuana, but we also have to understand that the baby boomers are aging out of Congress right now. The younger generations that have seen the hippies and grew up in the 1980s and 90s and 2000s are now starting to take power. And so many of them are more agreeable to the subject matter, and it's inherently Republican to have less regulation, less taxes, right, and have this more pro-business model. I think if you look at it as a chessboard, it's defending the states that are most important to us, not forgetting about the other states like California and Oregon that have taken negative actions against us, not forgetting about them, but really being very proactive in the biggest states to us. Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, Pennsylvania, of course Texas, Oklahoma and others that we really do a lot of business in. That's my 2 cents on it, but I think leaning into where we have our stronghold, playing the same dirty pool that our opponents are playing, is probably our best bet.
And then also, who in this room knows who their senator and congressman is? A lot more than I expected.
Great, more than I did.
Good job. Number one thing you guys can do leading this conference is shoot both of those, your representatives and your senators, write them an email. Oh, sorry, yeah. Write them an email. Write them an email.
That's for me.
And get in front of them, because it's easy to say, my voice doesn't matter and it doesn't matter to participate, but that's giving such an easy out to your representative who's supposed to be representing you and your interests. Don't let them off the hook easy. Be annoying if you have to be. Like, just show up and participate.
I said this last thing, and I think it's important, is it's voting season, and these guys go door to door collecting votes. They're gonna read your email. It's just a fact, especially the House members, maybe not senators, but House members are in voting season, so they will read your emails. If you have employees, tell them how many employees you have, tell them how much money you make, tell them all those things, and say, leave hemp alone.
Well, I think that's a great way to finish this, right? Get out there, talk to the people that matter, let them hear your voice. And, just like this room is somewhat empty, I think, everyone in here can carry that message, just to their network alone. So just tell your friends, we can still win this fight. We just need to be proactive about it. And I think we've got probably a handful of minutes left. Is there anybody out there in Radio Land that has any questions or anything that you all want to know that we haven't talked about?
I've got, when I come from a farming background, and hemp was one of them back in Nevada and Utah. And so I'm intimately aware of COAs and how hemp flower works. And of course, the big phenomenon right now is how far can we push THCA. Because all hemp flower is going to go over 0.3 no matter what. It's just not how possible hemp flower doesn't get 0.3 after. So what is the repercussions of selling hemp flower on the market right now? And I heard there's RICO issues going on with.
Sir, if I could just make one point. There are 3 amazing attorneys up here. I would say go get yourself one of those. Having a great attorney that understands the law and understands how to defend you as a business owner is the best thing you can do.
Well, and so maybe just repeat the question for the benefit of maybe people watching, asking about THCA flower, hemp flower, right?
Well, yeah, so we can call it THCA flower because they are pushing the limits on that after
Right.
using it. But my question is just on hemp flower in general.
Anything over 0.3%
Yeah, because when they're testing at the USDA level, 30 days ahead of harvest, and it's the whole plant mostly. So when you isolate just the bud, then you cure it 30 days after it's been tested. It is always going to be, no hemp plant can exist over 0.3.
Sure, but this highlights the importance of that definition of hemp, right? Because FDA's inaction on providing a federal consumer safety floor for these products, that definition, which is supposed to be only for hemp growing in the ground, now applies to products, right? The 0.3% delta 9 THC. So even if it's illegal at the federal level when you harvest it and you have your COA, you have to go look at the state laws. Because individual states have caught on to all this stuff because of the marijuana guys. So just because it's legal at the federal level does not mean it's legal at the state level.
For example, in Colorado, we have a 99% WHIP. We can transfer 99% Delta 9 THC to anyone in the state as long as it does get remediated. I think Oregon's got something similar, and then one of the Midwest states too. I'm not sure, but state as long. I'm going to speak for the lawyers. I don't transfer anything over 0.3% Delta 9 THC over state lines. So that's my not so legal opinion, and they won't say that out loud, so I will for you, but I'm a business owner. So luckily we wrote statute in Colorado to give us WHIP protection so that we can buy full spectrum distillate and convert it over to isolate and to Delta 8 and et cetera. So, every state is different. I think that is the answer.
Well, I guess my concern is there's no hemp flower you can transport that is under 0.3. It's impossible. All floral.
That's what the COA is for.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
So what can we do? Obviously, you're right. There's like nobody here. So
I'm sorry I started that.
it almost seems like that as small business owners, we need to maybe push more of this financial problem onto our vendors. But, if my vendor charged me an extra 3% and I knew that money was going to advocacy, I'd have no problem with it. But is there, what can we do to work with them? Because I know right now they already carry the big chunk of the burden of the cost of advocacy, but how can we contribute or find vendors that are doing that?
I think a great point here is there are 3 attorneys up here and 2 business owners.
Right?
Myself and Bret Worley just stood into the breach. We walked through that door and said, we're going to fight for this, right? We're not attorneys. I'm not an attorney. I may have, some working knowledge of how the legislature works, but I stood up and I said, I'm going to fight for myself and my friends, right? If every person in this room contributed 5%, 10% of your gross revenue, 2% for some of the larger companies, and actually stood up and stood into that breach, we wouldn't have to raise money anymore. We would have $6 million to fight back. If everybody in that room did the same thing, we'd have more money than them, tenfold. So what I would say is advocate with your friends in business. Go to distributors, manufacturers, other retailers, and just ask them to join the association, or any group doing it.
Yeah, I think we have so many options. I mean, monthly donations to American Healthy. There's a certain gentleman sitting somewhere in this room whose 50 stores provide the entire cover for the state. I mean, roundup programs, tell your vendor you're not going to do business with them, make sure that they do donate. That's another way to do it. There's lists all over the place. You're welcome to ask us on who does contribute. People want to know. People want to be known to be contributors because people are more likely to do business with them. So there's lots of ways to check.
And one of the other things is show up. I mean, showing up here today is really important, but I just saw Carlos. I've seen him in many hearings in Florida that we've had. So when the call goes out, hey, the legislature's doing XYZ naughty things on this day, please show up, please help us fight. Show up. It's a pain in the butt. You have to redo your schedule. You may have to drive several hours, but actually show up, testify. Go around in your state capital and meet with your legislators. If there is an association already established, like North Carolina has one, we have one in Florida, Georgia, get involved with that association, volunteer, show up. Though that testimony is so powerful. You have more powerful. All hope is not lost. You have tremendous power by having those face-to-face conversations with your legislators. They want to hear you. It's very powerful to say, I'm in your district. I am a small business owner, and I'm really concerned about this vote that you're going to have this afternoon. It's really hard for them. They've got to really think about stuff when you do that. So getting involved, opening your heart, your pocketbook, as well as your time. That's what makes this happen.
And being respectful. I mean, when you're having those conversations.
Absolutely. Yes.
Be respectful.
Yeah,
You certainly can't just walk in with your hand out and say, what have you done for me lately? You're shutting down my 5-generation family farm. You have to give them a little bit more than, don't kill my industry, don't make me go back and tell all my employees that they no longer have health insurance, that they no longer have jobs. You have to humanize it to a certain extent, but you also have to be able to say, I understand that you care about this. I would like to help you with that passion project of yours, Mr. Legislator or Miss Legislator. How do we work together and keep this thing going?
I mean, at the end of the day, we get the government we deserve, right? Thank you. Just stand right there.
Yeah. All right. That's it. Thanks, everyone.